Going to be talking about vision and perception and how these can be impacted after a stroke. Vision matters because it plays a vital role in all activities of daily life, from dressing to driving. And oftentimes, vision deficits are overlooked during the recovery process. According to the American Stroke Association, about 65% of stroke survivors have some kind of vision deficits. In this presentation, the term vision will be used to describe the connection between the eyes or sight and the brain's translation of that information from our eyes. I will give a brief description of the eye anatomy, the visual pathway between the eyes and the brain, and we will also look at a variety of deficits and disorders that can impact vision and affect function. To help us understand the entire vision process, I'm going to highlight a few key features of the eye anatomy that are involved in sight and vision. First, we have the iris, which is the colored portion, and it controls the pupil size. The pupil, which allows light in. Then we have the lens, which focuses light. Then we have the retina, which is a light-sensitive layer that converts light into electrical impulses. We have the optic nerve, which carries signals from the retina to the brain for interpretation. We also have muscles that help control our eye movements. Now I'm going to highlight a few other diseases and conditions that can be present prior to a stroke, which can exacerbate any vision deficits that may be caused by the stroke. Some common ones are cataracts, macular degeneration, and glaucoma. A few others include presbyopia, which is a loss of flexibility in our lens, why we need reading glasses. Diabetic retinopathy, which causes damage to the blood vessels of the retina, which can cause blurred vision. Now we're going to look at a few eye movement disorders. These are also disorders or conditions that could be present at baseline, but they could also be caused by a stroke. Eye movement disorders occur when the nerves or muscles that make your eyes move are damaged. Things that are often impacted are your depth perception, balance, and coordination. A few examples of eye movement disorders are nystagmus, which is an involuntary rapid eye movement, strabismus, which is misaligned eyes that don't point in the same direction, diplopia, which is seeing two images instead of one, and it could be caused by misalignment or cataracts. Another eye movement disorder is difficulty with smooth pursuits, which is when we have to use our eyes to track a moving object, or an ocular motor apraxia, which is difficulty initiating voluntary eye movements. Now we're going to take a look at the visual field and the visual pathway. The visual field is the entire area a person can see with their eyes when they're looking straight ahead. For purposes of this presentation, we will be focusing on just the left and right visual fields. In this diagram, the left visual field is indicated by the color red, and the right visual field is indicated by the color blue. The visual pathway refers to the route visual information takes from the retina, which was at the back of the eye. After visual information in the form of electrical impulses pass through the retina, it goes to the optic nerve, which carries those electrical signals to the brain. The optic chiasm is a crucial part of the visual pathway where optic nerve fibers from each eye cross over to the other side of the brain. If we look at the diagram and follow the pathway of the blue or the right visual field, we can see where the right visual field information, again, that's in blue, and it collects blue from the left eye and information from the right visual field from the right eye. And where that information, all from the right visual field, crosses at the optic chiasm, travels through the optic nerve along this pathway to the back of the brain and to the primary visual cortex. Now let's repeat that with the left visual field. So if we look at the red or the left visual field, we can see where a portion of each eye collects information about the left visual field. So the inside part of the left eye collects information about the left visual field, and the outside part of the right eye collects information about the left visual field. This information passes through the optic nerve, meets up at the optic chiasm, and then travels along the pathway through to the primary visual cortex on the right side of the brain. It's really important to remember that each eye collects information from both the right and left visual fields. This will be especially important when we think about field cuts or field loss, which we will discuss in the next slide. Visual cuts or visual field loss refer to loss of a specific area of the visual field. There are different types of visual field cuts depending on how the stroke has impacted the brain. The most common being hominis hemianopia, which is the loss of vision in either the right or left half of the visual field. This can be seen in this image, showing a loss of vision on the right side of each eye. Another is a loss of a quarter of the visual field, as seen here, or a scotoma, which might be just a spot of vision that has been lost. And that can be in one eye or in both eyes. Next, we're going to look at parts of the brain that impact vision. So far, we've looked at how the eyes collect information about sight or our visual field, how it travels through the visual pathway from the eyes to the brain. Now we're going to take a quick look at the different parts of the brain and how that can impact function. So we have our occipital lobe. This is the primary area responsible for processing visual information. We have the brain stem. This plays a crucial role in controlling eye movements and coordinating them with the head and body movements. The brainstem also contributes to balance and spatial orientation. Then we have the parietal lobe, and that's involved in our understanding of spatial relationships and recognizing objects and navigating in our environment. Then we have the temporal lobe. While the temporal lobes are primarily associated with memory and language, they also play a role in visual processing, particularly in recognizing faces and objects. The thalamus, not able to be seen on this diagram because it's located deep in the midbrain, acts as a relay station for sensory information. Then we have the cerebellum, which is also involved in coordinating movement and balance. A stroke can cause a wide range of visual processing deficits depending on how the brain was impacted. Some common visual processing deficits after our stroke are visual neglect. This is where a person may not be aware of objects or even their own body on their affected side. Left neglect being the common. Often the parietal lobe is impacted. A person can have difficulty with visual attention and visual memory. This could mean difficulty sustaining visual attention to stimuli. It could also mean difficulty remembering visual information, both short and long term, which makes learning very challenging. Visual agnosia, that is the inability to recognize objects or faces by sight alone due to the damaged connections between the occipital, parietal, and temporal lobes of the brain. Damage in the temporal lobe may also lead to visual discrimination deficits, which that may be difficulty discerning shapes, patterns, letters, numbers, and sizes, which could make reading very challenging. One specific deficit is visual neglect or visual inattention. Often we think of left neglect. This refers, as stated earlier, when people are not attending or unaware of things on the stroke-affected side of their body. This problem isn't related to sight, but results from damage to the brain. Patients may actually have their full visual field, but they ignore objects on one side. When we look at these drawings, we can see how they only draw the right side of the clock, the right side of the house. Unlike hominis hemianopsia, where there is actual physical loss of vision, visual neglect or inattention is a problem of attending to information on one side or the other. Some other disorders include ocular motor dysfunction, which we discussed earlier. Those can be challenges with eye movements, such as tracking with the eyes, coordinating eye movements. You could have a visual field loss that we talked about when people are only seeing half of their visual field. Diplopia, which is double vision. Visual hallucinations, while less common, can happen. These are characterized by visual hallucinations, often presenting as patterns, animals, or people that are not actually present, even when cognition is intact. In review, vision is a complicated process involving both the eyes and the brain. Sight is the act of seeing with our eyes. Perception refers to how our brains make sense of that information from our eyes. The type of deficits and severity will depend on what part of the brain was affected by the stroke. These could include things like visual field loss, eye movement disorders, or challenges with visual processing and perception. There can be a significant impact on function. As stated in the beginning, we use vision for almost all aspects of daily life. Deficits or challenges with vision can make activities of daily life challenging, including dressing, eating, grooming. Mobility and navigation may become challenging, including increased risk for falls, difficulty moving around unfamiliar environments, and significant challenges with driving. Reading and writing may become difficult, given possible challenges with letter and word recognition, tracking objects. Social interactions can also become difficulty. Mood and well-being can be impaired given the variety of challenges that come with vision deficits. Often people experience increased depression, anxiety, and a reduced quality of life. But it's important to remember that neuroplasticity is a key in recovery. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by stimulating the brain with repetitive therapies, tasks, and activities, which will advance recovery and increase function. Rehabilitation is important. These are some components of rehabilitation. Vision therapy, and they might engage you in specific type of eye exercises and vision activities like scanning, working on spatial awareness. You may also work with an occupational therapist on compensatory strategies, trying to set up your environment to be as successful as possible, or a neurooptometrist who will guide you in appropriate glasses, what you need to do for lenses, possibly prisms. The most important thing to remember is that neuroplasticity is important. With therapy, you can make improvement. Thank you.